Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura. And as a child, did you ever collect fireflies and butterflies and little bugs and put them in jars? Well, as an adult, collecting bugs and putting them in jars, it's a whole lot easier. Let's make a quilt. Now, this is an easier way to collect bugs. We have lots of different bugs and lots of different colors. Now, this fabric is from Blank Quilting. It's called Garden Critters, and we're going to make a quilt with this. We're going to pair it up with some other fun fabric from Blank Quilting. And what we're going to make are bug jars. Now, this is a free pattern from Blank Quilting, and I'll put a link in the description so you can print it out and follow along. And the way the jars are laid out, they're very unique. They're not just sitting in rows. It does look very complicated, but I can assure you this is really so very easy. And we're going to go through this step by step. If you print out the pattern, you'll have a diagram with all the fabrics that they use. There's also a book panel if you're interested in picking that up. And of course, the directions. With this pattern, we're going to make two jar sizes, a large one and a small one. They're very easy to put together. We need to make 8 small jars and 8 large jars. Most of the pieces are going to be the same size. The small jar, you're going to need a 6.5-inch square. The larger one, you're going to have a 6.5-inch by an 8.5-inch. So 8 of one and 8 of the other. We're going to take these and turn them into jars by having little corners. Those corners are going to be part of a background. So all of your background will need to match, and that way it's going to give that jar shape. The cornerstones are going to be 1.5 inches. So for each jar, you're going to need to have one in each corner. So you're going to need a total of 96 of these little 1.5-inch blocks. The side pieces are going to be the same. They're 1.5 inches by 10.5 inches. You're going to need 32 of them because they're going to go on the sides. The lids are all going to be the same size. With that 96, you are going to have enough of these 1.5-inch squares to continue the background. This lid piece is 1.5 by 4.5. So you're going to need a total of 16 to go with your 16 jars. The top piece, and that's going to be this piece here, and on the larger piece, this piece right here. The larger piece is 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches. You're going to need 8, and 1.5 by 6.5, you're also going to need 8. This is going to go with the small jar. This is going to go with the large jar. Those are all you're going to need. So you're going to take your 16 lid pieces, sew on the 1.5-inch squares on each side, and that is your lid. The next thing is going to be taking that square and that rectangle and turning them into that jar shape. You're going to start with that 1.5 inch square. You're going to put them on the corners, and you need to sew a diagonal from corner to corner. So you're going to be able to take all of those squares and draw a line from corner to corner. Or you can do this right at the machine, so you don't have to draw any lines. Setting up the machine is no different than regular quilting, and that needle needs to be right in the center, not on one side or the other. My machine has already a mark on my bed, which is that center mark. So I know that my needle is going to follow that center line. And this is where nice big sticky note pads come in handy. So I'm going to take one large piece off on the side with the sticky, and I'm going to place it right along that center line. I'm not going to cover my feet, but I'm going to come as close as I can to the feet. And I'm going to be able to follow that center line. So that edge right there equals that needle position. That's centered, it comes centered along. Now, if you don't have the marks on your bed, you're going to have to be able to find the marks. And that's also going to be really easy. Put the needle in the down position because we're going to use that needle as the guide. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take that ruler and you're going to have it just touch that needle. You need to find a straight mark somewhere on the bed. If you have no markings at all, you're going to be able to just use that plate. And you're going to put that ruler on a straight line, touching the needle. This now is going to be straight. You can take that same old sticky note and you'll be able to just put it right along that ruler line. Now you will know you'll have a straight line coming from that needle all the way straight down. Now we're going to be able to stitch those corners on without having to draw a line. This is the line we're going to follow. So I need to add this little square onto one of the corners. Match up the two edges, and then you're going to stitch from corner to corner. And you're going to place that edge of the needle right there at that point. You're going to take this corner and line it up to your edge. Needle down and stitch. Now you're not going to watch that needle going up and down. This is the area you're going to watch right there at that point, because you want that point to follow this paper all the way. And just slowly have it follow that edge. And you'll come right off. You're going to be able to chain piece these, which means one piece right after the other. Just take that, move it out of the way, leave your thread attached, and put your next corner on. I'm going to match up the two sides and repeat. Put my needle right there at that tip. Have this corner following that edge. Put your needle down and start stitching, following this, not looking at the needle. And what you want to do is come right off of that point. And you're going to be able to just keep moving this and do them all one after another. Now you've stitched from corner to corner without drawing the line. And when you take this little edge and you flip it over to the corner, it should match up. Now you're going to be able to take and trim a little bit of this triangle off. Now you can use a ruler and cut a 1/4 inch, or just snip it off. Just fold it over and just run your nails along it, and that's going to press it enough to keep in that position. We're going to put the lids onto the jars. For the small jar, you're going to need that large piece, and that's going to get stitched right onto the top. For the large jar, you need the small piece, and stitch it right along the top. The background is now on all of the jars. We're going to add these long thin pieces onto the edge of both jars. It's the same size for both jars. We now are done 8 large jars and 8 small jars, but the blocks are identical in size. Now if you want, you could actually just sew these together in rows and it would look fine. However, I do really like this checkered path in between. So let's make that checkered border. You're going to need 5 strips of the white and 5 of the black at 2.5 inches. You're just going to cut down the whole width of the fabric. And you're going to sew those together into 2 different strip sets. 5 strips in each set. You're going to have one set with 2 of the white on the outside and one set with the black on the outside. And press them so that all of the seams are going towards the dark. You need to trim them into 2.5 inch segments. You need 16 of one set and 16 of the other. We're going to take these strip sets and we're going to sew them onto the jars. Starting with the small jars, you need to divide your pile into 2. So you're going to have 4 and 4. And the borders are going to be sewn on different on the 2 different piles. The first pile, you're going to take the strip set that has the white on each end and sew it onto the one side. When you have that sewn on, you're going to take the strip set with the dark on each ends and sew it onto the bottom. The next set, you're going to start with the white and you're going to put it on the opposite side and take the strips with the black and put it at the top. With the large jars, you're going to do the same system. 4 in each pile, and we'll put the strip sets on. You're going to start with the white and you're going to sew it onto the one side. The dark is going to go up at the top. Starting with the whites are going to go on the one side. The dark is going to go on the bottom. And in the directions, they do have the diagrams on how those corners go on. But if you notice, these 2 blocks are the same and those 2 blocks are the same. And same with the small jars. These 2 blocks are the same and those 2 are the same. So that's where the 4 pile and the 4 pile comes in. They have just given you the exact bug fabric in case you want it to look exactly like this. But I'm going to just do them random. All of the jars are now the same size. It's 12.5 by 10.5. So they're not squares, so we're going to put them together in rows. Each row is going to have 4 jars, and the jars are laid out so you'll be able to follow that little path. So we have the 2 short jars that are the same and the 2 tall, which is the same as this row. The second row, the 2 tall jars have the same border, and the 2 short jars have the same border, which match the 4th row. We'll sew them in rows and then sew those rows together. And you're going to be able to match up all of these seams together. And the blocks are going to match different in each of the blocks. Some will be in one corner, some will be in other corners. But you will always have a black and a white matching. And when the center's done, there's only 2 more borders to add. The first border, they have this beautiful star fabric in red, and the second one is this green fabric with all these little ants on it. I'm going to change it up so we can have a different look. So what I've done is I've put a black border on. I've used the same measurements, but I've added black instead of the red. And for the outside, instead of the green, I'm going to add the red bug jars. So I've added the black border on in place of the red one. Now I need to cut the outside border. And to use this jar fabric, I don't want to cut into one of my jars. So I want to use the middle of one of those rows. So instead of doing a 6.5 measurement, I am going to take 2 jars, and that is going to be my measurement. Now, if you don't have enough for the top and the bottom with the width, you might have to piece it. And this is one time I wouldn't recommend piecing on a 45-degree angle. Piece it in between one of the jars. So do the top in the bottom because that's your shortest distance first, and you're going to be able to go along the width of the fabric. When the top jars and the bottom jars have been added on, we need to add the sides. And this is where we're going to cut it from the long length of the fabric, not the width of the fabric. So we're going to be cutting it along the selvage. So we're going to need the measurement of both sides in order to cut that. So we're going to need this length cut to the same length as the quilt. Once I have the length cut, I'm going to cut in between the jars again. And I'm able to get 4 jars, and there's a little bit of a bigger space between every 4 jars. So this edge is going to be put off. So I'm going to have 4 jars and 4 jars running along the side. So I'm going to put my ruler in between these jars and trim. I now have the border at 4 jars. And this is not the same width as the top, but your eye's not going to notice it because you're going to be focusing on the jars. Now sew both these on to the right and the left. And even though I didn't have that 1/4 inch when I cut between those jars, you really don't notice it. That black just sort of blends it in. Some areas you're going to be able to match your jars up not too badly. Other areas you might have a jar cut off. But when it's all quilted, the eye's not going to pick up the odd little jar that you've had to cut off. It's only going to notice all the stacks of the jars all the way around the quilt. That checkered sashing inside of the quilt really makes it look complicated, but it really is quite easy. The sashing is just not running up and down like it normally does. It is inside the blocks. It's quick, it's easy, and it's a whole lot easier than collecting bugs outside. I do hope you give it a try, and thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.